who knew me first, who was my friend when I was naught but a whore's unwanted get, an orphan of the night court with a scarlet mote in my left eye, that made me unfit for Nama's service, that made superstitious country folk point and stare and call me names. And it was Hyacinth of whom I dreamed, not the young man I had left to a fate worse than death, a fate that should have been mine, but the boy I had known, the Tsingano boy with the black curls and the merry grin, who in an overturned market stall reached out his hand to me in conspiratorial friendship. I drew a deep shuddering breath, feeling the dream recede, tears still damp on my cheeks. So simple to arouse such horror. In my dream, I stood in the prow of a ship, one of the swift, agile Illyrian ships I knew so well from my adventures, and wept to watch a gulf of water widen between my vessel and the rocky shore of a lonely island, where the boy Hyacinth stood alone and pleaded, stretching out his arms and calling my name. He had solved a riddle there, naming the source of the Master of the Straits' power. I had answered it too, but Hyacinth had used the Dromond, the Tsingano gift of sight, and his answer went deeper than I could follow. He won us passage across the straits when we needed it most, and the cost of it was all he had, binding him to those stony shores for eternity, unless the years could be broken. This I had sought for many years to do, and in my dream, as in life, I had failed. I could hear the crew behind me, cursing in despair against the headwinds that drove us further away, the vast expanse of grey water widening between us. Hyacinth's cry is following, his boyish voice calling out to the woman I had become. "Phèdre! Phèdre!" It shivered my flesh all over to remember it, and I turned unthinking toward comfort, curling my body against Joscelin's sleeping warmth and pillowing my tear-stained cheek on his shoulder, for that was the last and greatest of my gifts, and the one I treasured most, love. For 10 years Joscelin Varai has been my consort, and if we have bickered and quarrelled and wounded each other to the quick 1,000 times over, there is not a day of it I would relinquish. Let the realm laugh, and they do, to think of the union betwixt a courtesan and a castellan. We know what we are to one another. Joscelin did not wake, but merely stirred in his sleep, accommodating his body to mine. Moonlight spilled through the window of our bedchamber overlooking the garden. Moonlight and the faint scent of herbs and roses, rendering his fair hair silver as it spread across the pillows and making the air sweet. It is a pleasant place to sleep and make love. I pressed my lips silently to Joscelin's shoulder, resting quiet beside him. It might have been Hyacinth if matters had fallen out otherwise. We had dreamed of it, he and I. No one is given to know what might have been. So I mused, and in time I slept and dreamed that I mused still, until I awoke to find sunlight lying in a bright swathe across the bed linens, and Joscelin already awake in the garden. His daggers flashed steel as he moved through the seamless series of exercises he had performed every day of his life since he was 10 years old, the training forms of a castellan brother. But it was not until I had risen and bathed and was breaking my fast that he came in to greet me, and when he did, his blue eyes were sombre. "There is news," he said, "from Azal." I stopped with a piece of honey-smeared bread halfway to my mouth and set it down carefully on my plate, remembering my dream. "What news?" Joscelin sat down opposite me, propping his elbows on the table and resting his chin on his hands. "I don't know. It has to do with the Straits. Isondra's courier would say no more." "Hyacinth," I said, feeling myself grow pale. "Mayhap." His voice was grave. "We're wanted at court as soon as you're ready." He knew as well as I did. Joscelin had been there when Hyacinth took on the doom that should have been mine, using the draw